Good evening, Dr. Jason Dean with Revolution Health here on what night is it? It's Wednesday night. I almost forget what day
That's
it
right.
is. It's a Wednesday night with Morley. We are talking everything from magnesium to retinol, vitamin A to you name it with the man with the wealth of knowledge. We are going a little prime time every couple weeks on a Wednesday night. So, Morley, welcome back to the show, sir.
Thanks, Jason. Great to be here.
Absolutely, and we'll get some people on here viewing this. And Morley is going viral every single video we do. You're getting 20,000 plus views, so people are
Seriously.
definitely desperate for the knowledge. And I shouldn't say desperate as in like they're requiring. It's I think as you said, and I think our last interview we talked about. You said we agreed there's so much misinformation out there
Right. Yeah.
that people are literally looking for real information. And then one of the reasons we even do this show, I've done this show, is because we for the first time ever have a medium, which is Facebook and other social media, to go live like this. Which used to have a whole studio broadcasting, etc.
That's right.
To
Yeah.
do this. And now he's on a phone, I'm on my desktop, and we're creating live video to help
This
people.
is this is a really fancy phone. Come on.
It is it is a fancy phone. We won't even we'll discuss that another episode on the minerals that are taken out of your body with the EMFs from these phones as well.
That's right. Yeah. That'll be a
But
special
before we
class.
yes. So welcome again, sir, and we're gonna dive right into it because we have a little bit limited time tonight. But you actually sent over an email to me today regarding some information, some studies you've been reading, and I'm going to have you just jump into it. It's obviously called on retinol, and we were discussing this last week, but you dive in because some of this stuff I have to sit down and read over it slowly, a lot of journal article, but phenomenal and fantastic. So dive into it, sir. Start talking to the people about what you've been reading up on.
Absolutely. One of my graduates, I have this Copernican Institute, and she's actually um, based in Norway. And I met her about a year ago. The phone rang, and I was with my wife, Dr. Liz, and I saw it and said Norway. I thought, well, I guess I should answer this call. And this woman gets on the line. She burst into tears. and she said, I can't believe I'm talking. I just want to thank you for saving my life. And I'm like, whoa, what's going on here? So she had been struggling for 25 years with 17 different doctors to try to resolve her thyroid issue. And so she went on the protocol, and within 6 months, she was off her thyroid medication. So that was very motivating for her. And so she wanted to do the training, and she's a consummate researcher. Her name is Liv Halverson, if anyone wants to look her up. She's really
Okay.
just a font of knowledge. But she came across this study that was talking about provitamin A and its impact. Provitamin A is the like beta carotene, the carotenoids. And so you have the precursors, and then you have the real vitamin A, which is retinol. But this study was looking at the impact of the carotenoids on iron, on zinc, and on vitamin A metabolism. It's fascinating. And it's about 30 pages. It's pretty ponderous. Lots of research, lots of studies that were identified in it. But it was absolutely fascinating. There was a section on the interaction between vitamin A and iron.
Hmm.
I'm not sure everybody knows that there's a relationship there, but there's a very intimate relationship. But what the study did was go into a very specific series of findings that I think are really revolutionary, because we have such a narrow understanding of what the problem is with iron. We think everyone's deficient.
Right.
It's like It's a Wonderful Life when Mr. Potter is reviewing all the files. 1A, 1A. Well, everyone's anemic. Anemic, anemic. And in fact, that's not the case. But here's a series of studies and series of findings, just to run through real quickly to give people an idea of there's a wow factor to it, that There's a decreased incorporation of iron, in this case it was radioactive iron, but iron into the red blood cells, a 50% decrease in, in an organism, these were rats, that were vitamin A deficient. 50% decrease. That's incredible.
Mm.
There was the structure and the morphology of the red blood cells was completely altered because of a vitamin A deficiency. Lowered plasma total iron binding capacity, that's a measure of how many docking stations there are in the blood, and lowered percent transferrin saturation because of a lack of retinol. Turns out that retinol is a critical component of making transferrin. That
Mm.
protein can't even be made if you don't have enough retinol. And the average practitioner assumes if your transferrin is low, well, you need more iron. It doesn't matter what the marker is. Well, you need more iron. No, in this case, you really need more retinol. Then you get into the really scary parts. Again, vitamin A deficient animals cause an accumulation of iron in the liver, cause an accumulation of iron in the spleen, cause an accumulation of iron in the bone. That would be the origin of osteoporosis, because osteoporosis is not a calcium issue, it's an
Right.
iron issue, and increased iron absorption within the gut. So that's a who's who of what's going on with people's body because of a retinol deficiency. Well, here's why these are significant. They don't measure iron in the red blood cell. They don't measure the structure of the red blood cell. That's not routinely done in a test. Um, they don't. The loss of retinol causes mild anemia. Well, it's very rare for a doctor to even measure hemoglobin today. It's all
Right.
ferritin. Unless you're pregnant, you're not going to get a hemoglobin, but that's not routinely done. Then again, as I noted, if the transferrin's low or the TIBC is low, well, they just assume you need more iron. But that's not, again, most doctors only do a retinol, or excuse me, they only do a ferritin blood test. Then the iron in the liver, the spleen, the bone, there's no test for that unless you're going to do a needle biopsy, and you first, because that's really painful. And the in the gut, that's where all this leaky gut is. It's from the iron in the gut lumen, and people don't know that. They don't. What's missing is this idea that iron is a well, and you need to check and see how much iron is in the well. It's like no. How much is circulating in the body? How much is in movement is being recycled? And it turns out that the marker for recycling is serum iron.
Hmm.
And ideally it should be 100 for a woman and 120 for a guy. And if it's below that, you got it, or above it, you got a serious problem. So if you're driving a car that's supposed to get 100 miles to the gallon, because that's really what iron recycling is, it's the miles per gallon. If you're driving a car that's supposed to get 100 miles per gallon and you're at 37, I've had clients as low as 21. That's an 80% loss of efficiency. And it's not from a lack of iron, it's been stored in the macrophages. And people don't realize that.
It's
And the
essentially an iron toxicity.
yeah, it is. Because it's iron in the tissue, because that's where the macrophages hang out. They hang out in the tissue. And they can't let go of the iron because they don't have bioavailable copper.
Hmm.
They can't open the door without bioavailable copper. And it's like it's so we've got this nation of anemic people, but it's the wrong kind of anemia. It's not anemia of iron deficiency, it's anemia of chronic inflammation.
It's so very often people are coming in saying they got a blood test done. Most blood tests are coming back normal at this point or negative, and
Right.
then they might even be showing for low in iron. and then they're putting more iron into the body, but they're putting in these pharmaceutical prescription grade irons.
Oh, it's frightening. There, a client of mine in New Zealand, formerly struggling with multiple sclerosis, now she's fine. She's got no issues. Also a consummate researcher. Um, she sent me an article yesterday. It was really unsettling, but it was, and I'll send it over. Maybe we can talk about it next time we chat.
Yeah.
It was a study of low dose iron therapy, iron supplementation, and its impact to cause DNA defects in the endothelial layer within minutes.
Hmm.
Within minutes. Author's name is Mollet, Mollet, 2016, for anybody who wants to look that up. And it's, Jason, it's really scary. And people don't realize that these defects are coming from the hydroxyl radical, and you can't make the hydroxyl radical unless you have hydrogen peroxide and iron. And once you've got the hydroxyl radical, you've got the most destructive biomolecule on the planet. That's the molecule that's causing lipid peroxidation, causing the destruction of protein. It's called protein carbonylation. It's a goofy way of saying destruction. And that's what causes the DNA defects. That's what dings the DNA, causes the nucleotides to get all confused. And it's like, geez, wouldn't that be nice to know about? But the thing is, people are not aware of how destructive these supplements are. And then in your neck of the woods, Jamie Collins is a noted researcher at the University of Florida in Gainesville.
Okay.
He's the only researcher I know of who can speak 3 languages. He can speak iron and copper and magnesium. The guy's amazing. That's rare to be able to do that. And he and one of his colleagues published a couple articles, one in 2016 and one just earlier this year, looking at, again, iron supplements and their impact on copper metabolism. And it's really scary. Again, the truth is becoming more prevalent now in the research, but people just aren't aware of the research.
Absolutely. Now, talk to us really quick too, because you're going to get people, and this always happens after this show is over. We get messages put up, different things like that, and people are asking. And it's combination questions. I'll ask the second one later, but the first one is: we have this information, but what are they doing every day in their lifestyle that is hampering this? Whether it's not getting the retinol, getting poor forms of the iron or the copper, whatever
Right.
it may be. What are they doing that they can stop doing to stop this cycle?
Great question. The most important thing I think people can do is stop taking vitamin D, stop taking ascorbic acid, stop taking calcium, and absolutely do not let iron supplements or infusions get anywhere inside your body. They're absolutely poison. So that's, and there are other stops that I talk about, but those are the big 5. But in terms of what they can do going forward, I think probably the most important thing is we live in a low-fat society. It's evolved over 60 years. People are so conditioned to it they don't even think about it. When I get a cup of coffee, I always put 2 pats of butter in it, and the baristas are always freaking out about it. I said, well, what's cream? Cream is just a precursor to butter, right? They go, oh
Right.
yeah, you're right. And they've heard of bulletproof coffee, but they've never thought about, everyone runs to coconut oil. Well, I don't want coconut oil because there's no retinol in coconut oil, but there's retinol in butter. So I think what people can do is start putting more retinol into their diet. So free range eggs, um, butter, grass-fed butter, heavy cream. No skinny lattes, no soy lattes.
We haven't seen any bullet. It's funny. I hate to admit this. I do drink Starbucks off and on only because I'm a coffee guy and on the road a lot of times.
Yeah,
It's the one you know what you're going to get every single time.
that's
I
right.
don't like going to random places and getting a bad cup of coffee because that can ruin your day.
That's right.
But between Starbucks with their over roasted coffee and then
Right.
all these other gourmet coffee places, it's actually fascinating the fact that bulletproof coffee has skyrocketed in
Mhm.
popularity, yet none of these places carry it.
I know. That does make us well. My rule of thumb at Starbucks is if they sell it, you probably shouldn't be drinking it or eating it. But I go to
Probably
Starbucks.
true.
Yeah, I go to Starbucks every morning because that's my cup of Joe, and that's where I read for a few hours and just kind of get the buzz going. But you're right; it's predictable. But is it the best? Probably not.
Oh, absolutely. I tell my wife all the time it's not the best. She says, "Why do you drink it?" I go, "Because if I'm on the road, especially, I don't drink it very much when I'm home. It's only if I have to go to a meeting. But
Right.
literally on the road, I do not want to take my chances. I like
Mm.
coffee too much to go and get a cup that's watered down and you don't like it. But it actually is really interesting. How much more could they make in a capitalistic society if they decided to do a bulletproof version? And then
Absolutely
on
agree.
top of that, it's actually interesting. So I was watching a couple shows, and this plays right into what you've been talking about. One was actually a movie, and it was a Disney movie, strangely enough, or Disney Pixar type movie, and it was regarding an Indian reservation up in I think Alaska, and it was
Yeah.
a cartoon, but they were feeding wolves salmon, and then
Wow.
on top of that, I watched another, I think it was a History or Discovery Channel, one of these reality network things, but it was a little more fun to watch because it was up in Alaska as well. And they have these actually Alaskan Indians and they have their kids, there's no television. And then what they're doing is they're going out and they're fishing for their salmon, and then they're going and collecting all these, basically I think they were duck eggs from the
Yeah.
different ducks laying. And it's interesting because not a vegetable on the plate,
No.
all fat.
All fat. Yeah.
And
It's
we
Weston
have
A.
totally
Price.
lost that society.
Right. Absolutely. And and again, there are vegetarians and vegans who get very offended, but it's like, you know, I'm going to come back to your question about what else do they need to eat. But the heavy cream is really important. The beef liver is amazing, and then cod liver oil. So those are the big five. Now, one of the things that was written up in this report that I alluded to earlier at the beginning of our conversation, they point out the difference in absorbing and availability of beta carotene in spinach and carrots, whether they're raw or cooked. Which would you guess has a higher content of beta carotene? Whether is it raw or cooked?
Well, I'd want to say raw, but it's going to be the opposite of what I thought. So I'm going to say cooked.
Yeah, there's 3 times more beta carotene in cooked spinach and cooked carrots.
Now give me that reasoning.
Well, I think what it is it's being cooked in oil of some sort, and I think it's freeing up enzymes that's making it more available. And what I think is important for the listeners, and especially for people who don't eat meat, you don't want to go green, you don't want to go raw. That I think that was one of the biggest surprises for Weston A. Price was he was expecting everyone was going to be vegetarian, and he was expecting they were all going to be low fat. And what he discovered in these 14 communities that he profiled is that no one was vegetarian. And to your point that you just shared with this program about the Alaskan Indians, 65% of their calories came from fat.
Right.
And the thing is, people don't realize how important this fat is. And if you don't cook food properly, you're not going to get the nutritional benefit. And that was the big surprise for Dr. Price was he discovered that even in even in tropical climates, they cooked their food. He wasn't expecting that. And we've been conditioned now in the modern era, quote unquote, that go green, go raw, and that's not the best way to get food, especially these key nutrients. They lose their availability when they're raw.
I actually picked up a magazine the other day from a health food store, and there was a very well-known, I won't put their name on here because I don't feel like getting sued, but they actually had a well-known detox center in South Florida, and people from all over the world go there. And the actual creator of it wrote an article regarding how bad eggs were for you. And then the rest of the magazine is mostly plastered with having to go raw to cure disease. And I actually don't know. I don't know him personally. I've met him before, but the the eggs are bad for you thing, which was like just mind blowing to me, especially coming from another natural health practitioner. At this point, we know the benefits we get from that. To say don't eat the fat, but go raw is going to take all care of your problems.
Right.
I mean, mind blowing at a level.
Well, what is an egg? It's the nutrition that supports life at the very early stages. It's like, well, yeah, it's amazing what's inside that egg. Yeah, and it's just, and as far as I know, I think early man and early woman, we've been eating these things for millennia of millennia. It's so I again, we have to be careful not to drift into the most contentious issue on the planet, which is, what are you eating? Because we all have such personal opinions about it. But I think there's a lot of mythology out there, and it's really, we have to be careful. And that's why I think studies like Dr. Price or Primal Body, Primal Mind, where there's been this historical perspective of what have our ancestors eaten for a long time, or Kate Shanahan's Deep Nutrition, really powerful studies of what really turns on our body, our genetic code, our metabolic pathways, and it is food, but it's got to be the right kind of food. It's got to be prepared properly. And what I think really surprised me was to realize that one of the most foundational aspects of our life is the ability to make new blood. It's called erythropoiesis, which is a really twisted word. It, but it, the hormone involved is called EPO, and, and any athletic scandal usually involves athletes wanting EPO. Why do they want EPO? They want the erythropoietin so they can make more blood, so they can have more oxygen, so they can have more energy, so they can be on the winner's circle. Well, what they've discovered is that it's when you break down vitamin A into its component parts, one of the key component parts is called retinoic acid. Well, retinoic acid is, I think it's a hormone actually. It's equivalent to like, storage D versus active D. Well, retinoic acid is an active form. And what does it do? It stimulates the very beginning of the process to make these cells that make red blood cells. They're called erythroid cells. And it's a retinoic acid that starts that process. Um, the whole idea of these colonies, these erythroid colonies forming, are stimulated by retinoic acid. The very production of the hormone has ties back to retinol and to the retinoic acid, and that the hormone has something called a retinoic acid responsive element, a rare. That's a big deal. That means that it's looking for retinoic acid in order to be turned on.
Hmm.
And just this is not widely known. This is not widely taught. But what's happened is people have been conditioned to think that, well, the only way you make new red blood cells is put more iron in the body. And that's not the case at all. It turns out that, you know, you need minerals in general. You need B vitamins, you need copper, you need retinol, and yeah, you do need iron, but if you don't have those other factors, nothing's going to happen. And what's the knee-jerk reaction or response in most practitioners' offices? Well, here, take this iron supplement. And it's a very pedestrian, almost embarrassing solution to the problem. Because the question that the individual should be asking is, well doctor, why do I have this low iron? What's causing that? You know, doctor, why is my vitamin D so low? What's causing that?
Hmm.
It's not that like it's some like there's some leak in like a slow leak in a tire. No, that's not what the body's not. It's not recycling. It's not communicating. It's not the metabolic process is somehow getting blocked. And I don't think practitioners are digging deep enough, and I don't think the patients are asking tough enough questions. I think this is a two-way street. People need to ask better questions.
Oh yeah, we've absolutely. I mean, I actually had a conversation with someone about that today, and I had to be careful how I word this because I don't want to offend everybody. But we have there is a specific generation that has helped allow this medical system in place, and it really is the baby boomer generation for the most
Oh
part.
yeah,
Now,
absolutely.
obviously, they were tricked into it. It's not like they wanted it, but it's almost when this generation moves and we cycle through and transition is where my generation, younger and even a little bit older, are starting to question these things because like you said, patients should be asking more questions and they should be more enlightened about what's going on with their own body, because it really is the first start. As soon as you let someone, as soon as you give responsibility over to
Right.
somebody 100% and they become the authority, you've already lost phase one of healing
Absolutely. No,
because
you're
you're
absolutely right.
expecting someone else to do it for you.
Right. Yeah, you've lost the responsibility, you've lost the engagement, you've lost the intellectual attachment to what's going on. No, and I think you've got the sign revolution behind you. It's to me, it's a revolution for becoming independently healthy.
Absolutely.
That's
And
really
then
what
take
it's
me
about.
back to take me back. You said something a little bit ago that I actually want to finish off on this tonight is iron in the gut and the leaky gut connection.
Oh,
So
sure.
take us through a little bit of that because let me be honest with you. Leaky gut is, we know there's stuff going on, the gut brain connection, but I don't know anybody who has connected those two and connected iron to it.
Okay. So in the gut, you basically have these cells. They're called enterocytes,
Mm-hmm.
enterocytes, enterocytes, and they work. They stick together. Well, they're sticking together because there's an energetic attraction. So the individual enterocyte has these lumen, right? And the iron comes through here and comes into the cell. Now the heme iron comes in a different doorway than the non-heme iron. Let's just leave it at that. But they both end up in the cell. Well, in order to get out of the cell, it's got to be changed back to, when it's inside the cell, it's in a +2 state. That's ferrous iron. And it's a very reactive form of iron. But as long as it's inside the cell, things are okay. But in order for it to get into the bloodstream, it's got to come out the doorway of the enterocyte, and it's got to be changed from a +2 to a +3, and that's the ferric form. And the transferrin is in the bloodstream, and it's available to hold 2 atoms of iron, but it's got to be in the ferric state. Well, the only way you can get it into the ferric state is to have the copper-dependent enzyme ferrooxidase has to be able to make that conversion. Now, in the enterocyte, that particular enzyme function is made by a protein called hephaestin, and in the macrophage, it's called ferrooxidase. But that copper-dependent enzyme is the doorman to let the iron out so that it can go into the bloodstream, which is at the base of the enterocyte. Okay? Well, if that doesn't happen properly, the iron's going to start to build up here. And then it's going to start to affect the mitochondria of the enterocyte. Well, when you've got these guys hanging together and they're supposed to have this energetic attraction, that's based on being able to put out energy. Well, what does iron do? It kills the energy function.
Mm.
The energy loss in a mitochondria from too much iron can be anywhere from 40 to 60 to 80 to 96%, depending upon the conditions. So that as this iron builds up in the enterocyte, it becomes really dangerous for the cell, and that's when you start to have oxidative stress. And then what's the flip side of oxidative stress? It's called inflammation.
Mm.
And then it starts to affect the little digits to attract the food, and they start to get shorter. And a lot of bad things happen when the iron starts to build up in the enterocyte. It's just a very basic um, toxicity to the gut. And what's supposed to happen is um, this natural process is taking place, and every 2 to 3 days, these enterocytes are supposed to wash away. That's the natural process. Well, I think what's also happening is the below the enterocyte is the epithelial layer, and there's actually 5 layers of epithelium. And that's where the iron starts to build up, is in the epithelium. And so the enterocyte gets washed away, but the epithelium continues to build up with the iron. And that's where you start to have some really serious infections and, SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. What are they feeding on? They're feeding on iron. They can't exist without iron. And so and what is absolutely essential for maintaining the proper vitality of the epithelial layers? It's retinol. Retinol regulates the epithelium. It's one of the most important functions of that vitamin. And if the epithelium is not being nourished properly with retinol, the whole bacterial structure of the gut starts to change, and the lactobacillus starts to leave the gut, and the Escherichia coli, E. coli, starts to fill up, and then you got a mess on your hands.
Absolutely. And actually, we just had the question about SIBO pop in, and we talked about 2 weeks ago, we talked about the cod liver oil, not fermented cod liver oil, which we'll take that up again on the whole Weston A. Price thing, but the Rosita cod liver oil, non-fermented, because you're getting the retinol in that.
Absolutely, and it's a power packed amount. You're getting a 10-to-1 ratio, which is what the body needs, and it's a very pure form, and it's like jet fuel inside a body.
I actually got a bottle 2 weeks ago after I talked to you, and it came in the mail, and I'm going to be starting to use that. So it's a good one. It's a very good one.
No, it's excellent. I don't know of another one that rivals it, really.
Absolutely. And apparently a lot of people are asking questions based on that. So what we'll do in a couple of weeks when we talk again, we'll take up more of that information on, and I don't want to beat the food choices thing to death, because it's true there is, but it seems like that is one of the biggest questions we get over and over, is that. And then next time we talk, I would love for you to have the avocado story that you told me a couple weeks ago or so, regarding avocados and potentially some facts and myths behind that.
Yes, that'd be a lot of fun.
Excellent.
I can tell you that even though avocado starts with the letter A, it doesn't have any retinol in
it. We'll leave you on the cliffhanger right there.
That's right. Yeah. Okay.
Excellent. Well, sir, thank you so much for being with me again tonight, even though we got a little late start because of, basically traffic. So we'll get that handled. Right? And we're going to have Morley back here most likely pretty much every couple of weeks on Wednesdays. We're going to make sure that works. It's getting some good ground, and we're helping a lot of people take control and responsibility for their health. So, sir, thank you again so much for your knowledge. You are amazing.
Thanks for the opportunity, and look forward to our next chat.
Absolutely, guys. This is it, tonight's episode of Revolution Health with Morley Robbins, Dr. Jason Dean, signing off. You guys take care and leave any comments you want to. This is being shared across several groups, and it is being watched by all of us. So share whatever questions you have. And if you have something you'd like to know about, definitely drop a question in there, and we'll get that for the next episode. So guys, have a great Wednesday night. Take very good care of yourselves. Be healthy. Eat lots of good fats. Signing off. Take care.